But let's take a look at one of the trending tickers here on Yahoo today, and that is Tilray. It's on the move to the downside, off just about 5.5%, despite reporting a narrowing loss and record revenue. Now the company posting sales of $194 million. That was up 34% from a year ago, and an adjusted a net loss of $2.7 million, narrower than what we saw a year ago. The results from Tilray coming as cannabis stocks struggling to gain attraction with investors. Tilray is down about 19% over the past 52 weeks. So what's the play in 2024 for the sector? We want to bring in Dan Ahrens. He's a portfolio manager of AdvisorShares Pure U.S. Cannabis ETF. It's great to have you here. So let's talk about the momentum, lack thereof, that we're seeing from cannabis stocks right now. Are we going to see that turn around at all in 2024? What's the play?
I think we absolutely are. And to use the word play, the play would be U.S. cannabis. A big part of my job is educating people on not blindly investing in cannabis when you hear about potential reform coming in the United States. People need to know what they own and understand the differences between a company like Tilray, who's listed on a U.S. exchange and is the most heavily traded cannabis stock out there and a big name, but they can't do any cannabis business, THC business in the United States. Tilray loves talking about the United States. I think they actually revel in the confusion that unknowing investors might have. Tilray's earnings this quarter were okay-ish. A big part of their revenue was beer sales, not cannabis sales. Also a good move in European sales. But they're only allowed to, sell cannabis products in North America in Canada, not in the United States. They also have a bad habit of over-promising, under-delivering quarter after quarter pretty often. We hold that stock in our YOLO. That's the ticker symbol, YOLO ETF. That's our global strategy, but not our much larger MSOS ETF. That's the largest cannabis fund in the world. It's focused just on the United States, as I said. And I'm going to go ahead and say, I think cannabis, U.S. cannabis, has a good chance to be the top performing industry, top performing sector in 2024 with the reform we're expecting in the U.S.
That's really interesting here, Dan. So how much of that also hinges on the results of the 2024 election, specifically at certain state levels, as we know cannabis is going to be back on the ballot in some new jurisdictions?
Well, cannabis has been growing state by state in the United States. There's only 12 states left that don't have any legalized cannabis. More often, we're talking about medical cannabis. But then other states that have had successful medical cannabis programs often look to add adult use onto the ballot. So cannabis continues to grow in the United States. But the big elephant in the room is at the federal level. These companies are facing major headwinds. A lot of people expected reform when Biden first got elected and Democrats got control of the House and sort of the Senate. But they made promises before that election and have failed on those promises. But this year, we feel strongly that we're finally going to get federal reform by bypassing all those politicians and having the government agencies do it. The HHS wrote a letter that Biden asked for over a full year ago, recommending a rescheduling of cannabis. Now it's in the hands of the DEA. We have no true known time frame. We actually thought it might come in November, December, but now people are thinking it could come any day, where the DEA is expected to accept the HHS recommendation to reschedule cannabis from a DEA Schedule 1, where it doesn't belong at all. Those are heavy narcotics with no medical uses, and change it to a Schedule 3 drug. And a number of dominoes fall after that. It would be a huge windfall for U.S. cannabis effectively, decriminalizing it. It's a different move to reschedule, but that's what we're expecting at any point now, and it's a huge move for these beaten down stocks that we've been investing in for the last 3 years while we're waiting on politicians.
Yeah, Dan, drill down a little bit deeper on that, just in terms of those individual plays. I know you said to focus on the U.S. market. More specifically, what are the names that investors should keep in mind at this point, since you think it's going to be a top-performing sector this year?
Well, very simply, you can look at our fund, AdvisorShares Pure U.S. Cannabis ETF, MSOS, because we have the holdings on the website every single business day. So our top pick, we're very heavily weighted in, is Green Thumb Industries. Now, this is a multi-billion-dollar company at this point, operating in many states, primarily in the Midwest and the Northeast, but a big footprint. Best-in-class operator, but like all the other companies in this area, they're hampered by not being on major U.S. exchanges, therefore not able for many institutional investors to invest in. They're traded OTC in the U.S., but listed on a secondary exchange in Canada. But GTBIF is easily our top pick. Right behind that, we have Curaleaf. Curaleaf, by many measures, is the biggest cannabis company in the world. Recently was able to uplist, we call it, to the Toronto Exchange, which is a major international exchange, much better than the smaller secondary exchanges in Canada, but still traded OTC in the U.S. and facing many of these same problems. So our fund is very heavily weighted in those two. But again, anybody can look at our website every single day. And because our fund it's not an index,
right? It's
an actively managed fund. We don't overly actively manage it, but I call it a little bit like a voting machine. You can see our top weighted holding is our number 1 pick. Our 2 weighted holding is our number 2 pick. And you can see the others as well.
Dan, appreciate the time here, covering all things of the canna trade here, if you will. Dan Ahrens, who is the AdvisorShares Pure U.S. Cannabis ETF Portfolio Manager. Thanks so much for taking the time. We'll also be diving into the cannabis market some more later today. We've got the Tilray CEO, Irwin Simon, sitting down with Julie Hyman and Josh Lipton in the 4 p.m. hour.